So if we did, families would be homeless. So what does Jesus mean? We have to understand what Jesus means by being his disciple. And unfortunately, this reading cuts out the two last verses of the reading where you can figure out what Jesus means by what a disciple is. Salt is good, he says, but if it loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? Jesus says his disciples are to be the salt of the earth. Salt preserves food against spoiling. So the disciples of Jesus, as salt of the earth, share in Jesus' mission to preserve the image of God in every human person against spoiling. And there are many, many things that can spoil the image of God in us. We can act in ways that are unworthy of the image of God that we are. Other people can oppress us and demean us. The joy and peace that should be the expression of being a person created in the image of God can be beaten out of us by the pressures and difficulties of life. As salt of the earth, the disciples of Jesus are called to be witnesses to the way of life that Jesus offers us, the only way of life that can bring us fullness of happiness. So any one of you who does not renounce all his possessions cannot be my disciple. Authentic disciples of Jesus must give total commitment to the mission of the church. They cannot hold anything back. And there are two things that threaten the mission of the Catholic Church right now in the 20th century. The first thing that threatens our mission is private faith. Private faith. Anyone who does not hate his own family cannot be my disciple. Jesus is using the word hate the way it is used in the Old Testament to describe the way God chooses people. For example, God says, Jacob I have loved, Esau I have hated. So God does not obviously personally hate Esau as an individual, but what that means is God chooses the family of Jacob to have a special place in salvation history. And so God has chosen the church, and so we also need to choose the church. It should be as obvious to people that you are a member of the church as it is that you are a member of your own family, says Jesus. People in the 21st century are willing to go online and post pictures of literally everything that is going on in their lives on Facebook. There they are at parties and on vacation. People are willing to go on Twitter and tweet literally every thought that comes into their minds. But when it comes to the practice of faith, many people keep it private, as if they're almost ashamed of it. Do you have pictures of yourself on Facebook going to church, reading the Bible, praying? When people look at your Facebook page, is it obvious that you're a Christian? So if we're going to be disciples of Christ who are salt of the earth, it must be as obvious to people that we're Christians as it is that we're members of our own family. Jesus says that authentic disciples do not let family pressures compromise their commitment. You may have to choose to go to church on Sunday instead of family activities. You may even have to arrange family activities to make space for Sunday worship, but that is exactly what Jesus is expecting us to do. In the second reading, Paul calls on Philemon, the slave owner, to make it obvious that he is a Christian by freeing the slave who was run away. He said, to free him, I want everybody to see that you're a Christian by the way you treat this man. We should be as ready to invite people to church as we are to invite them to our homes. And Jesus says this is important public witness. Our faith cannot remain private. If people see that church is that important to you, then they may be inspired to want it as well. The Archdiocesan census for 2000 to 2010 showed that mass attendance has dropped by 400,000 people in the Archdiocese of Chicago. When was the last time you invited somebody to go to church with you? When was the last time you shared with someone how important your faith in Christ is to your life? The second thing that threatens the mission of the church is mediocrity. So Jesus says people and other ways of life all strive for excellence. He says the most important thing to a king is his reputation of power. And Jesus says no king will go into battle until he has amassed sufficient troops. And if he can't do it, then he will become an expert at negotiating peace terms. And Jesus says the most important thing for a businessman is profit. So he says no businessman will risk losing his reputation by beginning a project that might go bankrupt halfway through. He's going to make sure that he's ready and he can really do it. And Jesus says his disciples should be just as concerned to strive for excellence in the church. And that means that ministries have to be well planned and they need to be consistently carried out. If we start parish ministries and they only meet once in a while or they eventually fizzle out, who's going to be interested in that? It means preachers, speaking to myself, need to make sure they devote adequate time to preparation of teaching so that people do not go away uninspired or bored. It means there has to be a consistent effort to get the best people to participate in the ministries of the parish. That means we have to invite people, and that means that every person is called to discern what are the gifts that God has given me, and what can I do to really give those gifts into the parish in an excellent way. It means there must be consistent commitment to support the parish's financial needs. Every survey of Christian giving shows that Catholics consistently give the lowest percentage of their income to the church of any Christian group. So we don't want to be known for that. We would like to be known for our excellence. So as we see Mass attendance dropping, we cannot simply say, well, people have turned against the church, although that may be true. But it may also be that people do not see anything compelling in parish life. People can clearly see the excellence of an Apple computer. People can clearly see the excellence of a sports team. When they look at parish life, what do they see? Are we all doing everything we can to strive for excellence, and to strive to give our particular gifts to the church as best as we can? Salt is good, but if it loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? Any one of you who does not renounce all his possessions cannot be my disciple. The Gospel of Luke calls us to be honest with ourselves about where we are in our commitment to the mission of the church. The preservation of the image of God in our fellow human beings depends on us. As salt of the earth, we are called to be witnesses to the way of life that Jesus offers us, the only way of life that can bring us the fullness of happiness. Let us stand together. Let us renew our covenant with the Lord by professing our